Musculoskeletal disorders, or MSDs, are the most common cause of occupational ill health in the UK, currently affecting 1 million people a year and costing society billions of pounds. MSDs affect the muscles, joints, tendons and other parts of the musculoskeletal system. You are most at risk from MSDs when handling or moving loads or objects, so it's important you understand the risks associated with manual handling. I, like a lot of people, suffer from back problems and have done so for many years. I've been forced to stop playing rugby and need to be very careful when lifting.
Hi, do you want to come through?
My back soon tells me if I've done something wrong, and it usually ends up in pain and suffering and a series of visits to my osteopath, Jan here.
Phil's back problems stem from using poor lifting technique when he worked on construction sites some 20 years ago. In those days, lifting equipment was rare and the workers received little training. Due to the repetitive overloading, the discs in between the vertebra in the spine became stressed and scarred. Unfortunately, discs have a poor nerve supply, so Phil did not know that he was doing anything wrong. Eventually, the discs became damaged and severe lower back pain is the result.
So, speaking from personal experience, you must know the safe way to handle loads, so the likelihood of you suffering from an MSD, such as back pain, will be reduced. It's not just lifting, though, that can cause a problem. Pushing or pulling a heavy load can also be potentially hazardous if not done properly. Nearly half of all pushing or pulling injuries are to the person's back. This DVD aims to reduce the likelihood of you suffering from an MSD whilst at work by working smart, thinking for a moment before lifting. For example, can the load be broken down into smaller parts? Explaining the general principles of manual handling, such as the load, the individual, the task, and the environment. Demonstrating the correct manual handling technique to use when handling loads you will face on a regular basis. Information regarding choice and operation of mechanical lifting equipment. There will be a short written exercise at the end to test your understanding.
How have you been for the past 2 weeks?
Not too bad at all, actually. I think there is some improvement coming through.
Good.
It sounds obvious. We've all been there. You're under pressure to get a job done and something heavy needs to be moved. You get it shifted, then afterwards someone points out a much better way that was easier on your back and quicker as well. My point is this: before carrying out any manual handling, do you really need to lift it by hand? Can you use a mechanical lifting aid? Is there an hydraulic lift or barrow available nearby? Do you need help? Is it a two-person lift? Sometimes a load may not be particularly heavy, but it's just so much easier with two people. Can you break down the load into smaller, lighter parts? It is much better to do so, as to reduce the likelihood of injury. Where possible, always store the heaviest objects at waist height, with the lightest either low down or high up. You should always try to avoid storing heavy objects on the floor. It is often difficult to physically work harder in the workplace, but by thinking about what you are doing and working smarter, you can make your life a whole lot safer and easier. In order to carry out a manual handling task safely, there are many factors that you should consider. However, to simplify things, these can be grouped into 4 main categories. The load. Loads can vary considerably. They may be heavy or light, large or small. They can be an awkward shape or even unstable. Sometimes a large but relatively light object can cause more problems than small heavy ones. The individual. We're all different and have different capabilities for lifting and carrying loads. Our gender, fitness, strength and height will all affect what we can safely handle. This is the reason why health and safety regulations do not specify the exact weight that can or cannot be lifted. The task. It may be that the load has to be moved a considerable distance. Some loads may be pushed or pulled. Pulling a heavy load can exert a large force on your back. It is usually better to push rather than pull, if possible. Environment. Environmental factors such as uneven floors or trailing cables and hoses can create trip hazards when carrying. Cold temperatures in winter can make roads and paths icy, and the height and stability of shelves and storage racking can be a major issue. The important thing to remember is, before charging into lifting something potentially awkward, stop and think for a moment. Weigh up in your mind the load, your individual capabilities, the task, and the environment. I'm absolutely certain that if you do, the likelihood of you suffering an injury will be greatly reduced.